Welcome to the $1 Billion Podcast, a weekly show about the entrepreneurial journey and making it big in any industry. We're your hosts, Joe White and Kane Daniel. Welcome to the $1 Billion Podcast, where we unpack the stories, strategies, and tools behind success. Today, we're joined by Tom Hall, co-founder of Blue Mortgage, a CRM transforming the way mortgage professionals do business. Join us as we talk about how Blue Mortgage got started, its impact on the mortgage industry, and what's ahead for professionals ready to take their business to that next level. So, Tom, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Hey, Joe. Great to be here.
So maybe you can tell us a bit about that founding story about Blue Mortgage. Fill us in a bit about on your background and how the concept of Blue Mortgage came to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a bit of a funny story. Like all founding stories, it's completely unique. At least we like to think so. Maybe it's not. You can tell me otherwise. But it was a cool story. So going way back to 2014, my co-founder Massimo, he actually started kind of just general CRM help. He just kind of went out. He was in his final year of school. He just said, "Hey, I need to make some money. I think this CRM thing seems interesting. I'm just going to go out. I'm going to see who needs help with their CRMs." And in that capacity, he worked with a whole bunch of businesses, restaurants, trucking companies, you name it. But for whatever reason, kept coming back to mortgage. And some of his early clients were folks like Ron Butler. A lot of people know that name. But also, I don't know if you know, like Mortgage Outlets, Sean Stillman, some of these types of names. And so we ended up, he more so ended up working a lot in the industry. And then about 3-4 years later, I was actually living with Massimo. We're friends from school. And he said, I think there's this trend. This thing keeps coming up. I think there's some demand here. Do you want to jump on and join me to do this? And at the time, I was working as a consultant, actually. So I was going to the States and I was doing all these, pretty high intensity things. I said, okay, well, maybe it's time for a change of pace. So I jumped on in 2018. We launched Blue Mortgage then. And you know what? It's been a crazy journey ever since. Lots of bumps, lots of I guess roadblocks along the way, but every one of them has been a new opportunity to learn more and to evolve, I guess. And so really been an exciting journey.
And Tom, what about maybe a really quick background on CRM, just for those maybe listening don't know what a CRM is and the benefits that it provides, and maybe what the thought was getting into that type of business anyway, for you personally, not necessarily Blue Mortgage.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, CRM, for everyone, it's customer relationship management. So as the name implies, it really touches anything that you might do with your customer, a CRM might be involved with. So it's basically somewhere, it's on your laptop, it's a browser-based tool, you can log in, and it's basically a place where you can keep track of your clients, write notes about your clients, do things like that. Kind of like a Rolodex. Think of it like a digital Rolodex. And that's really the foundation for a lot of these CRMs. But then where I guess maybe I got excited and where CRM has been kind of an interesting thing for me is taking it to that next level to say, okay, now that I have all my clients in this spot, now I kind of have it organized, being able to automate certain things with it. So being able to say, hey, if this, then that. And, that's the side of me. I'm maybe a little bit of a nerd that way. I'm an engineer by training, I guess. But, anything that can add efficiency, I can create a process around. That's what really excited me. So to say, yes, I have this database, this interesting tool, but that I can actually then use this tool to create processes and then even automate those processes. That's where my mind kind of, my I guess that light bulb moment for me to say, hey, what? This is an area that's really exciting for me.
And what do you think it was about? By the way, I think I saw the pinky ring, right? You mentioned engineer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What do you think it was about the mortgage industry? I mean, you mentioned your founding partner was sort of came into it and he kept coming back to it. What do you think it is about the mortgage industry that was so attractive to have a new CRM system?
Yeah, you know what? I think, it was a couple things going on. I think we timed it really, really well. I'd say there's two big factors. One is that just in general, the mortgage industry, it's an exciting industry. And I don't know if you guys agree with this or you see the same thing from your end, is It's really just thousands, I'm say thousands across Canada of small businesses, entrepreneurs, right? So it wasn't so much that we had to go to, I don't know, these big companies and sit in a board meeting and, go through a steering committee and 5 approvals in order for them to actually adopt something. The industry was really exciting, and it was really exciting for us to work in the industry because we could go to an individual who was had their hands on the business, both from an operational but also from a decision making perspective, understand the benefit of this type of tool, and then be able to implement it right away, so that that cycle is really quick. And so being able to work one on one with really truly entrepreneurs was just so exciting for us. So that was one thing. And then the other thing that was maybe more on the luck side of things, I think we timed it really well. So I think around that 2018, 2019 time frame when we joined, we saw a trend more on the tech side where things really started opening up. Right. So, for, historically, a lot of, people use just one system, and it was very closed and it was kind of archaic. And then, hey, around that 2018, 2019, everyone started opening up their APIs, allowing to connect between different systems, which really enabled, I think, a little bit of a tech wave to kind of come through. And we rode that wave a little bit. So it was kind of both, yes, that entrepreneurial, I guess, you would call vibe in the industry, but then also kind of the luck side of things of timing it right.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know, Joe, if you want to jump in, but I did have one question based on what you said as well. I mean, that makes sense that it's a kind of an open market. There's a lot of decision makers, a lot of business to be had, so to speak, on that end. Now, for yourself, though, as really an entrepreneur as well, being you said by training or by trade, a engineer.
Yep.
Why, was that a big leap for you to come into maybe a less stable environment, or what was that transition like, coming into a different industry with a different feel?
Yeah, totally. It's such a good question. And I think just to give you the full background, I actually, training as an engineer, hence the pinky ring here, the engineering ring. And so did that, and I actually worked in oil and gas, so big companies for a little bit. Didn't like it. So then I ended up being a consultant, more business consulting, and would fly around and do different things, a lot in the States. And so that transition to entrepreneurship, really what drove it a lot for me was, kind of the, what would you call it? Eat what you kill sort of vibe, right? Being able to go out there, I felt in a lot of more big organizations, you be a little bit stagnant. And even if you did an amazing job, yes, maybe you get a pat on the back, maybe you'd get a bonus, but it didn't really translate. I really, really wanted, for me personally, that connection to say, hey, if I, work really, really hard, I'm going to see that income, or I guess I was going to say income, which is true, but really the result on the other end much more directly. And having that input output relationship much more correlated was exciting to me, and it was very motivating to me to say, hey, do you know what? If I put a little bit more, and if I can be competitive, I can be better than that next person, I'm going to see it on the back end. That was just incredibly exciting. And even me just talking about it now, I'm getting excited just just thinking about it, right? Because I think it's an a great opportunity, really. I think as we have as Canadians, I think a lot of people, sometimes people give Canada a bad rap, but ultimately we do live in a country where that opportunity exists, where anyone, a kid like me who just wants to pick up and do something can go out and do it and have success with it.
That's a fantastic point. And when you talk about your origin story, um, what was that like when you first started the business? Maybe
Mm,
walk us through some of the challenges maybe that you had, and
sure.
how you overcame them.
Yeah, no. So we talked about that transition where it was exciting at the time to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to go and do this thing that's really exciting, and that correlation exists, input and output. But then you get in here and you're kind of, to continue that hunt analogy, it's like you're in the middle of the savannah and you feel kind of naked and you're like, what am I doing here? Right? Who thought this was a good idea? So it was, a little bit of that imposter syndrome to say, okay, like, hey, am I the right person really for this? Am I really going to be successful? I'm competing against some of these big brands that might have a lot of money. What can I really offer? And I think that was really in those first couple of years. That maybe the toughest part was just that mental side of things to say, hey, are the things that I'm doing the right things? am I in the right space? Am I providing, value in the right way? So there's a lot of ambiguity, I think, very much so upfront when you're starting that entrepreneurial journey. And I think for me, more than anything, that kind of helped me get through that was focusing on the customer and providing the customer value, right? So anytime that I was kind of in that moment of doubt, hey, am I doing the right thing? I'd always turn to the customer and I say, hey, is this customer actually achieving value? Am I having conversations with them, or are they seeing results by using my tool that is extremely valuable to their business? And that was kind of my North Star to say, okay, yes, maybe I'm in the, the middle of this jungle here. I know I got to get north. If I can have that compass and I can just keep walking north, maybe I don't see the edge of the jungle just yet, but I know I'm going in the right direction. So that compass for me was very much so just customer value. Hey, if I keep providing value, I am going to get where I want to go. And so that was really helpful for me.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you can walk us through the customer value. Tell us a bit more about the actual CRM and how it benefits a mortgage professional.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, so I guess, yeah, for everyone listening, Blue Mortgage, we are CRM for mortgage brokers, primarily in Canada, almost exclusively in Canada. And kind of talked about at the beginning, a bit more generally, Kane, when you were asking, hey, what is a CRM? What attracted you to it? Yes, a CRM is a database, a place where you can store all your clients and do, uh, staying in touch, different things like that. But when you double down specifically in the mortgage industry and what Blue Mortgage provides, is that, but basically very much so tailor made to the industry. And so the couple ways in which we do that, and we say we're not just a CRM, but a CRM for this industry, is two big ways. One would be just the customization and templates, right? So we have worked with now three of the top five brokers in Canada. I think we have, if CMP does that list of top 75 brokers, I think we work with around 30-ish of those brokers. So we've worked with a lot of really, really top teams. And the great benefit of that is that we've learned a lot from them, right? I think that having that humility to be able to go to these top teams and say, hey, what don't I know? And being able to really learn from them, and then take that, package it up, and pop it into that system. And so for any mortgage professional who wants to then use Blue, on day one, they can open it up and they have hundreds of templates, pardon me, that have been battle tested, that are proven to actually generate business for you, and can really kind of take your business to that next level. So that's a huge one, absolutely. And a big part of that are the folks that we've worked with over the years who have kind of shared those best practices. And then number two, I would say, is the data integration. And again, Kane, that goes back to my earlier point, how, we're really lucky with our timing, right? Because ultimately, I always say any system, but especially a CRM, you're only ever as good as the information you put into it. I could sit here and I could say, we got great templates and we can automate things and we can, make it do backflips. But if your clients aren't in the system, well, then who cares, right? It's like it's completely useless. It's like a self-driving car, but it has no passengers. It's like, it's okay, it's cool, it can drive itself, but it's more valuable if people are actually in it. And so that's the second piece of it that's really valuable for us, is that we're able to really integrate with a lot of the big data sources that mortgage professionals use. Systems like Filogix, Velocity, Finmo, Scarlet, Boss. These are all systems I'm sure you guys are somewhat familiar with, but they're heavily used in the mortgage industry. We're able to pull that data in. So now we have, yes, the self-driving car, but also, a very easy way to get passengers into it. Passengers, i.e., being the clients of mortgage professionals. And the combination of those two things can really provide a lot of that value, really turbocharge a mortgage professional's business.
What was it like approaching those um, tech companies and the brokerages?
Yeah.
Like going after Velocity and Boston and so
Yeah.
on. Curious to hear what it was like when you first started calling on them. What was your strategy?
Yeah. It's funny, and it definitely evolved over time because, again, maybe as you guys know, a lot of these platforms, well, quite a few of them, they have their own CRM, actually,
Mhm.
right? Their own tool to actually stay in touch with the clients. And so, yeah, our initial strategy was, hey, let's call them up. Hey, yeah, do you know what? We'd love to integrate with you. And we got a lot of hangups, right? Hey, do you know what? We don't necessarily need this. We have our own thing. Why would we maybe help you? Because, hey, we have our own thing. And are we creating a competitor to ourselves? And so that was difficult at first. Honestly, it was. But I think really what kind of got us over that hump would be going back to what I said earlier about customer value, right? So we took a different approach of, instead of saying, hey, can you just integrate us? That'd be great for us as Blue Mortgage. We actually went through our clients. And so we said, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Client, some of these people that we'd be working with, we'd be able to provide a lot of that value for them, work with them closely, really help their business, and then turn around and say, well, actually, how we can take this to the next level for you is if we can integrate with some of these platforms that you're already using. And by having then the client going to these platforms and saying, hey, do you know what? It would be great for my business if you could connect to Blue. It's a different conversation because, again, like us, Velocity, Finmo, Boss, Firelogics, they want to provide value for their clients. And so by being able to really tell that story of saying, hey, actually, this is going to be valuable to your clients, Velocity, Firelogics, whoever. And I guess the next step being then valuable to you, then those conversations really started to get rolling, right? So it's just about reframing it. And I think it was a good lesson for us in general, which is, if you're ever asking something from somebody, always put it in terms of, what's in it for you, right? And that was kind of, I think, a mistake as an early entrepreneur, to just say, hey, what's in it for me? And can you do me a favor? I think it's a great actually reframing to say, hey, let's do this. And this is going to be great for you. And I'm, going to provide a lot of value to you. And if you can kind of do that shift, doors really start opening up.
I love the way you said that, because I love the idea of getting your clients to be almost like soldiers for you, right? And
yes.
it's
champions, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's very much an organic strategy. I think maybe you'll take a little bit longer, but then you'll really win well when you have a lot of your clients pushing their other providers to integrate.
Absolutely.
So I guess the question that I have on that is that what is it about Blue what were you guys doing right away? Maybe that was different or better. Like what was the real value that they were getting that they weren't getting necessarily with their existing systems and the CRMs associated with them?
Yeah, I think it was a couple things. I think that first and foremost, we were able to really lean into, I think, customizability. So that was an interesting kind of angle that we were able to provide. I think that, for a long time in the mortgage industry, and maybe I think a little bit still to this day, people think, hey, CRM, what is that? That's sending out a happy birthday email. It's like, okay, on my mortgage application, I recorded your birthday, and hey, once a year, I'll just send a, maybe crappy email with a generic clip art and say happy birthday, right? And that's what a lot of people thought CRM was. And I think still, especially when we came into the market, but even still today, I think that's out there a little bit. And so we were able to almost reframe it and say, hey, yes, that's cool. You can send an auto happy birthday. But what if you could do that in other parts of the customer journey? And what are those opportunities that you're missing, right? To say, hey, instead of just after you've closed and sending them this generic thing, maybe it's as soon as you get an introduction, you're sending something a little bit more automated. Hey, welcome to the family. Love to have you here. Maybe it's once you get an approval, sending that something out to the client or even the realtor saying, hey, do you know what? This is happening. And it can be automated and it can be personal. So, really, that reframe of going from, hey, this is something that's simple and just, maybe is on autopilot and a little bit stale, to something that's much more dynamic and customizable to them. So, that was, I guess, more on the technical side. But then on the other side, I think, for better or for worse, it was a lot of, the blood, sweat, and tears, I think, that Massimo and myself put in. And I think it speaks to, maybe the competitive advantage, I guess, entrepreneurs have as a small business, right? Instead of, very much so, I talked about on the selling side, not selling to a big bank and having to go through all these approval processes and things like that. The same thing applied to Blue Mortgage, especially in the early days. We can make decisions so quickly. We could jump on a call with someone right away. We could provide that one-on-one service. We could hold their hands. And it's something that I learned early, and I read somewhere, which is, hey, entrepreneurs and founders, especially in the early days, they have to do things that don't scale. Now, eventually you want to build processes and build a system and be able to scale it up and do that. But in those early days, hey, you're just trying to, get that customer, make them happy, make them valuable. And so you're in the trenches and you're doing these things that might not scale, but ultimately, builds those champions.
Yeah, we talk a lot. I love that message. We talk a lot about that, Joe and I, with our own company here, Remic.
Yeah.
It's very similar. I mean, Joe started it, and then I came on shortly after, and very similar story. And I think the I really resonate with that. I think the thing for us is we love the process of actually doing it. So it's not always just about the result. And I think that's important for all entrepreneurs, is that enjoying the process and being in the trenches, but actually loving it is really what I think will drive you through. But I did want to ask you a question again on the CRM.
Sure.
We're in 2024 now. So obviously the last couple of years, a huge kind of boom and of technology. I'm wondering, what are you guys looking at with, so much buzz with AI and everything else? Are you looking at that? What is the integration like? What is the future like?
Yeah. There's a lot there, right, with AI, and there's so much. And I know you guys have invested quite a bit in AI, and I've seen a couple of your things, and it seemed really impressive. So I think you guys have done a good job there. My kind of take on it with AI, I'm trying to think of maybe the right analogy for it is, it's let's call it like it's a little bit of a storm coming in, right? And storm being that it's going to be very disruptive. There's going to be a lot of tools. Things are going to change, absolutely. And I'm viewing myself right now as I'm a lonely guy on maybe a surfboard, seeing this storm roll in. So stick with me here on this analogy. But the point I'm trying to make is, I know the storm's coming. I know it's going to change a lot of things. But for me, I'm being quite, I guess, not hesitant, the right word, but trying to be very intentional about which wave I'm going to ride, right? Because, we are just being constantly bombarded. Waves are coming in. Hey, there's a tool that will, I don't know, write a song for you. Or, hey, there's a tool that's going to, summarize and write emails for you. And I honestly, me personally at least, and I'd love to get your guys' take too, I don't know which one's the right wave. And I think we're very much so early in the day of AI and what all the things that it can do. I think we're still, applying the old lens, being, SaaS and maybe mobile applications, to the lens of AI, which is a totally new modality. And I think in 10 years, it's going to look, what software is and AI is going to look completely different. And so I just don't want to hitch my wagon to a horse too early, just to then think, well, this horse that I just hitched it to, now there's a robotic horse that can go, 10 times the speed or whatever it might be, right? So, I mean, does that answer your question, Kane? Does that kind of make sense?
Makes a lot of sense to me. We've had this discussion a lot, and I think it's very similar, that we don't want to get caught up with any one thing. When there's going to be a giant that might come up and have that as just part of their tool set in like 8 months, when you spent maybe several months and tens of thousands developing it, and it's like, oh no, why did we do that, right? So it is very prudent to be careful with what you bring on, what you see in the future. So yeah, I love that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were actually looking at some software that does automated outbound calling.
Okay,
and it was really interesting at the time, but it was just at the outset, and they were trying to lock down distributors and partners and get people to pay, and the product just wasn't good enough.
Yeah,
and like that's something Kane and I were talking about, that somebody bigger is eventually going to come in when the technology gets just tweaked a bit more and do this properly. They're trying to cash in on it early, but really good points.
Yeah. I'm honestly, for me, I get a little bit nervous if anyone, and there's a lot of these folks coming to us, and I'm sure you guys too, saying, hey, this new AI this, a new AI that. And I think I'm just approaching them with caution, because there's going to be 100 things that people are going to come to me with, and 2 of them are going to be amazing. 2 are going to blow your socks off and just be, change your business. But there's also 98 that are going to be maybe more, what would it be, like used car salesmen, right? Mm-hmm. Who are just trying to see this wave coming through. trying to take advantage of it, trying to make a quick buck, and then they're on to the next thing. And so you got to be careful with that. But I guess the flip side of it, if I go back to my storm analogy, is you can't have your back to the waves either. You got to be looking at that
Mm.
wave, that storm coming in with eyes wide open, because Kane, to your point, maybe there's this giant wave coming, and you got to get ready for it. You can't just have your back to it and say, okay, it's going to come when it's going to come. You're going to get knocked over, right?
Yeah, sticking your head in the
Yeah.
sand doesn't
Yeah.
it,
No.
it doesn't work.
No,
It
no.
doesn't work at all.
No.
I think it's an important message.
Yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
This is what we always say. We stay curious about all
Yes.
the tools. Like, we use them every day. Because you're going to get left behind, right? I think it's really important to at least utilize to some degree the different tools that are out there. Try them, experiment. Some of them work well, some of them don't. But yeah, absolutely need to be curious and use all the technology that's available without wasting time, really. And you can't ride every wave, like you mentioned, to use your analogy. But I think it is important.
But you can waste a lot of time, right?
Yeah,
you can waste a lot of time.
You can. Yeah. There's a lot of rabbit holes to go down. And I think, to that point a little bit too, and maybe bringing it back to the mortgage market a little bit, is to say, I think that's, for me, how I'm looking at it is networking is so important, especially in this context, because, you can talk. I can't ride every wave, but I could ride one wave and you could ride another wave and Kane could ride another wave. And, okay, maybe it's not a perfect analogy, but we could compare and you could say this was really good. And I could say, well, my wave was crap. Don't ride it. Right. And so you can, by using kind of the network effect, you can get really smart on things a lot quicker. And to the mortgage market point is, I think that's, again, a great thing about it, is that you have these thousands of entrepreneurs who are each trying these different waves. And I think a lot of the power of the mortgage industry is that network effect to then say, hey, what worked for you? What worked for me? Let's learn from each other.
So, what would you say? Focusing a bit more on Blue Mortgage again, what would you say is the best way to use the product to get the biggest bang for your buck? How can it kind of transform? Might not be the right word, but maybe enhance somebody's business or transform. That's up to you. What you think?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? With the CRM, I think that, with a lot of them, and do you guys use a CRM? Do you use like a HubSpot or a Salesforce or something like that in your own?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Which one do you use? Do you mind me asking, or just curious?
Yeah, we've used
if it's
a couple
sensitive or yeah.
No, we've used a couple different ones, but we have a client side one, so our students that we use that just integrates with our website and our learning management system. That's kind of a custom version. And then we use
what is it?
I just don't use it anymore. That we have our sort of sales.
Oh, good.
It's going to bother me. I'm going to Pipe Drive. That's
Pipe.
What it is.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I know Pipe Drive.
Yeah.
Yes.
I noticed that you guys. So I guess you built your platform on Zoho. Is it powered by Zoho? Right.
Yes. Exactly. So Zoho's a global brand, and we just kind of put a layer on it, which is specific to the mortgage industry. And the reason I was asking, and going back to your question though, Joe, was just maybe you guys had this experience, is that with the CRM, and I think Blue is no exception, is that there actually are 1,000 things that you can do. And, I say that's the best and the worst thing about it, is that, there's, if you wanted to take it to the nth degree, and we have a lot of clients who have, the CRM can really impact literally every single step of your entire process. Right. And I think that's exciting. That's great. But on the other hand, for a lot of brokers and mortgage professionals out there, that can also be very overwhelming, right? To say, okay, how do we do this? And so, I'm going to take a little bit of a meta answer without going, and I'd be happy to go into the details of the product. But my first answer is a little bit higher, to say, when you go into a product like Blue Mortgage, there's probably, a list of 1,000 or maybe it's 100 of things you really want to do. And if you try to do all 100 of those things at once, you're going to fail, right? Almost for sure. You try to do, just a little piece of 100 things, you're going to get none of them done. And 3 months, you're going to get so frustrated. You're going to say, hey, I've been working so hard, but I see no results. This is not worth it. Forget about it. And it's in the trash bin. And then you go to MPC next year and everyone gets you hyped up on technology and you repeat the cycle, right? And so what I say to people is, yeah, you have that list of 100, rank it. So what's going to have the highest impact for the least amount of cost to actually implement? And those are really your two biggest metrics. And then once you have that rank order list, forget about number 2 to 100. Just forget about it. Just whatever. Don't even have it in your mind and be laser focused on number 1. And what that allows you to do is, first of all, hopefully get it done. You're actually going to get something done and start seeing some results. But also, it's going to give you that little bit of like just that dopamine hit that we all need. And, all of us were addicted to our phones and our social media. So if anyone out there says they're not addicted to those dopamine hits, I just don't believe them. And so you need to kind of give yourself that to say, okay, I've accomplished something. I've done something. I've seen the results. This thing works. Okay, now I'm excited to do number 2.
Can you give us an example, Tom? Maybe just
Sure.
for those listening outside the
Yeah.
industry, like in the mortgage
Yeah.
industry, of what that number 1 might be for a broker?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of like an interesting one, number 1 could be is we just helped a client, or I just helped a client with their referral management, right? So they are a completely referral based broker, primarily from realtors. And, it's pretty usually straightforward is, they get an email from a realtor with the client CC'd, and this is before Blue Mortgage, and they just kind of follow up and do some things, but things would fall through the cracks and wouldn't be very systematized. And so what we did for them, now the actual broker made a form and a portal that the realtor can use, can type in the information of the clients. Automatically, when that form gets submitted, it's into the CRM, so it's tracked and it's in there and it's not going to fall through the cracks. And as a final step, they actually implemented a drip campaign of 2 weeks, 5 emails, so that automatically those clients are making sure that they're being taken care of and you're doing everything you can to get that meeting and help that client. It's great for the client because they're getting the service they need, but it's also great for the realtor because they know, hey, if I'm sending something to this broker who now uses Blue, they are going to follow up with my clients. They are going to make sure my clients get the help they need. And it's a win-win-win for everyone involved. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When it comes to maybe what, a number 2 might be.
Sure.
So talking
Yeah.
about the referral source, how else
Yeah.
might an agent use the
Blue?
software?
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's, like I said, there's 1,000 things you can do. So, referrals is a big one. And I see more and more, honestly, people are transitioning to be more referral based business. But then I'd say on the other end of things, it's about, I would say, the closing and the wrapping up process. And I think that I always say that the closing date is sometimes the most stressful part for the borrower, really. And that becomes with, there's a lot of responsibility on the broker to make sure that they do that. And with, Spider-Man quote, with great, I guess, power comes great responsibility. Is that the right? That's the right
Yeah.
phrase. Anyways, something like that. In any case, point being is that with this really stressful moment, it's yes, you can flub it and it might not be good, but if you can nail it, it's going to be really, really great for your client. And so that's another, I think, number 2 that we've seen a lot of people do is how do I do the picture perfect closing process? And usually what that involves is extremely transparent and upfront information to the client of what the actual closing process looks like, making sure that when the funds actually transfer, again, you're being transparent to not only the client, but maybe the realtor involved. So that's, completely dialed in and maybe automated even. And then finally wrapping up, doing a closing gift. And the kind of the expert level hack that I've seen some people do with the closing gift is to actually sign it on behalf of, yes, you as the broker, but also the realtor. Again, you can see how the realtor is very much involved in a lot of these processes because, hey, it makes you look good, sure, but it also makes the realtor look good. And now, hey, they're more willing to do business with you. Because ultimately, that's what a realtor cares about. They don't care about, I don't know, you pay for their coffee or take them to lunch. They want to make sure that if I work with you, Tom, as a broker, you're going to help me do more business and serve my clients better.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the referrals, and we deliver some courses and other information, especially those that are brand new to the industry, and referral sources and the importance of communication and having a system. So I wanted to ask on that, Tom, for those that are maybe new coming in, like just entering the industry,
Mm-hmm.
looking at maybe a CRM, maybe their brokerage provides something, maybe they're looking
Yep.
on sort of the market, what's available. What do you think they should be considering, and what might be important? And then also, how do they get started? Like, is it important to have everything up right away so you're set up going forward? Or maybe they can just
Mm.
start with something very small, like you mentioned? Do they need a CRM right away even? I guess just
Yep.
generally, what advice would you have in regards to that type of tech?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a tricky thing. I mean, first and foremost, advice I've chatted with a lot of, I'd say, more veteran brokers out there, and consistently what we hear from a lot of them is the thing that they wish they implemented 10 or 20 years ago, whenever they started, was implementing a CRM, right? Because if you're 20 years in and you're saying, "Oh, I have all these clients that I would have loved to have stayed in touch with and built a relationship with," to get a system up and running at that point, it's very difficult. So a lot of them look back and say, "Oh, I wish I just would have kind of tracked it along the way." So with that said, I think it's something that new agents, people coming in, they at least need to be thinking about, have at the back of their mind to start. What I say is, start with the easiest thing, the lowest barriers, especially if you're just getting into the industry. There's so many things you got to think about. You got to be getting business, you got to be figuring out your licensing, you got to be doing courses. Across the board, it's a lot. So do something that's low barriers. Maybe it's just an Excel sheet. Maybe it's your brokerage's CRM. That's okay. I think to start, absolutely. I think for me, I never want to force someone to use something like Blue Mortgage if they're not ready for it, because it's just not a recipe for success. So say, hey, start with something simple, low barriers to entry. Maybe it is just a Google sheet, but then don't neglect it, right? Have that thing at the top back of your mind. And I use the analogy of a car again. So now you're driving this car, you bought this car, but inevitably, as your business grows, that car is going to start making noises. It's going to be, clanking a little. Maybe it's the engine. Maybe it's a transmission. I don't know. I'm not a car guy. Maybe you guys are. But in any case,
Aren't you an
that
engineer?
car's, yeah, I know, right? Yeah, betraying my engineering background. But in any case, there's going to be those sounds that car is going to start making. And my advice is listen to those sounds, because if you just ignore it, eventually you're going to get to the side of the road. And by the time you're at the side of the road with smoke coming out of your car, it's going to be too late. And it's very hard to make that transition. So pay attention, and what I mean by those sounds, and now if I'm going back to what a CRM is if you're starting to do things repetitively, right? If it's actually starting to slow you down versus speed you up in terms of your day to day. And if you're finding those things are true, then those are the sounds you need to listen to. And at that point, that's when it makes sense to, hey, maybe look at something like Blue Mortgage.
And with Blue Mortgage, what is the additional benefit? I'm sure you get asked this a lot. So maybe you're with your brokerage. They might have a basic CRM type system. What is it about Blue Mortgage that is going to enhance that to make it valuable for that agent?
Yeah, it's a couple things. I mean, first of all, I chatted about this a little bit earlier, but it is that customizability side of things. So being able to, make it your own, completely customize it. That's on the, yes, what the automations and the CRM actually does. I think that's really important, having that independence and that control. But the number two piece of it too, I think, is also on the data side of things, and the independence. The data sovereignty is sometimes the fancy word I like to use with that, right? Because inevitably in this industry, we, first of all, we work with all brokerages, all networks. I think all of them have their pros, have their cons, and I think for every agent and broker out there, they just need to look at each of those and understand what's the right fit for them. So we wear no colors, but we've also seen many, many times that, as someone's career evolves, their needs that come out of a system also evolve, or their needs that they come out of a brokerage or even a network will also evolve. And so having that data sovereignty, having control over their own system, that this is mine, I could do whatever I want. I could move to the US, I could move wherever. It doesn't matter. This data and this system is going to follow me around is a huge, huge piece of it. So that's number two. And then number three, I'd say this is kind of a more, I guess, when I talk about the list, this usually comes at number 3 or number 4 on the list of things to do in a CRM, is we actually also have what we call our productivity suite. So it's 40 other apps, software tools, things like calendar booking, e-sign, social media manager, chatbot on your website, kind of these extra digital tools that kind of add a little bit more value. It's not the lowest hanging fruit. It's probably not number one on your list, but hey, once you're starting to get number 3, 4, 5, it can really add some value in that sense.
And not to get too granular here, but I'm just curious because something
Sure.
we've been working with for a while is, have you guys looked at like note takers, like automation for taking notes and integrations with or integrations with pre-existing note takers?
Like, what do you mean? Like, what? Give me an example of note taker.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be particularly relevant for brokers who are doing consultations or meetings that there's sort of an AI process that records the meeting, that summarizes the meeting, that creates to-do lists for both everyone involved, and there's hardware that you can get that attaches to your phone. There's a lot of software that can come into your web conference meetings. So just curious as an aside, if you guys looked at that.
Yeah, we use Fathom. Have you guys looked at that one? Is that one that you guys looked at? There's a bunch out there, I know.
Yeah, I've seen it. I haven't touched it, but I've definitely seen it. Yeah.
Fathom's the one. Fireflies, right? And from a hardware perspective, Plode.
Okay, I don't know. I know Firefly. I've heard of those guys. The short answer is yes. And going back to our AI thing, we just talked about, hey, all these waves coming out and which one to take. That's one that we've kind of, dipped our toe in, so to speak. It is something that we do use quite regularly, these automated note taking. And where we see it come in with the CRM, we are able to, and we've done this in our system. It's not in Blue yet, but if we see success, we probably will want to implement something like it, which is you have a meeting with Tom, automatically those notes get taken, but then that AI summary of what that actually meeting was then attaches to Tom's profile in the CRM, right? And so that's, that gets exciting, and that's now the nerd side of me starts to get a little bit excited there. But
it's
also
very exciting. It'd be really cool. Also, if you could, if you could really prompt the AI bot or the agent to say, hey, find something, identify something in a conversation that's personal, and then put that in this field here. So, and then find a reference item that I could maybe send, or you could make a very personalized process in an automated fashion, which is also very exciting to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's a cool one. Then also, a thing that comes out of the CRM that we use a lot is tasks, right? Just to-do list items. And so that's something that also is, okay, yes, I get that note summary, but those tasks that the AI generated actually can become tasks in my system with due dates. And then, hey, the ball really starts rolling there. So, it's very much like the conversation we had earlier. It's so exciting to start thinking about these things and talking about these things. And we want to do our diligence to say, hey, if we're going to really make a bet on one of these, we want to make sure it's the right bet to make.
And then there's the compliance part as well, which I'm sure you're very aware of. Like, how is this going to be okay? Not technically, but recording people. What's the disclosure has to be, and all the other stuff that I'm sure brokers will have to go through.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's, again, it's maybe this is a better use of my Peter Parker phrase, but yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. Right. And yeah, I think I actually did an interview last week with Canadian Mortgage Trends. There was an OFC report saying, hey, AI is coming in and there's going to be a lot of fraud, and we need new regulations on AI to control all this fraud. And I think we need to be wary of it. But ultimately, for me, AI is just another tool. Right? It's like the internet. And so let's not make new rules on how people can use the tool. Let's use our old rules and say, hey, if someone violates these old rules by using a new tool, then hey, that's how we're going to regulate it. I get a little bit nervous of over-regulation of AI, especially at this point, because we are so early in the process.
It's funny, Joe, that just reminded me of, we had launched a company several years ago to try to create a chat bot for mortgage brokers. And it was very early on, way before OpenAI. We use Google's Dialogflow to try to create a conversational bot for mortgage brokers that they could.
Which now looks archaic. Yeah. Right.
I was going to say, can I get a demo?
We had done a sort of a launch party, like a conference, and we showcased it. And what you said just reminded me. One of the brokers that was there asked if this bot was going to be licensed, like as a mortgage agent.
Yeah. That's something, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, which was very, very telling of what's to come. I think, and what has come now is that there's going to be more and more of those conversations, and very interesting.
There is. Yeah, I think. Well, it is the right point. And Dong Lee, I was on a panel with him at. I think you spoke, Joe, at the conference at the summit.
See him,
yeah, that's right. And he told the story where someone did that, a chatbot, and they put it on their website, and then that chatbot gave some mortgage advice. But then the mortgage broker who set up the website was actually ultimately responsible for that advice. And I think it was like non-compliant advice. And so you have to be careful with that. But again, you shouldn't make rules for the AI specifically. You should use the old rules. And if the AI violates these old rules, then, maybe don't license them specifically. But hey, I guess that's the tricky part. Who's ultimately responsible for the actions the AI takes?
I think that what we're seeing on our side, because we use this technology in our industry, in the education side as well, and we're seeing a greater ability to be able to harness and take over the knowledge base so that it doesn't hallucinate as much, and so it can use our data source, our knowledge base, and we can really sort of cap it in terms of what it can talk about or what it says with additional prompts and data. And there's interfaces now for that, even with OpenAI. So I think you have more control over it. So it will become more and more your responsibility, I think, generally anyway.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, it is the licensed individual's responsibility for the tools that they use. And as you mentioned before, Tom, that this is AI is a tool, CRM is a tool, everything, your phone, all of that. These are just tools to help us connect and perform better. And we're ultimately responsible for what comes out of them.
Totally. Yeah. It's just, So to the same point of, hey, don't regulate the tool, but hey, we got to be responsible for those tools, right? That's the trade-off.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Excellent. Tom, this has been, I don't even know how long we've been going because
it's flown by. Yeah.
My thing shut off here.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, Tom, thank you so much. I think this is a particularly exciting time for you guys, I think, to keep riding that tech wave. And with, as we talked a lot about, with the addition of I'm sure, a lot of different tools coming out that you could integrate with. So we look forward to seeing what happens with that and maybe talking again very soon.
Yeah, well, that sounds good.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Maybe a quick question: How have you found the uptake on it using individuals that are currently using or part of these other networks? How are they finding, or how are you finding the uptake on the mortgage side, replacing the brokerage CRMs?
Yeah, I think there's I think it's, for us, we are very much so looking at those agents who do, I say a lot of the things about it is, the customizability and things like that. I say, hey, if you want to just do a happy birthday email, use your brokerage CRM. That's on, and they're great. We know them all. We know all those teams out there, and they're going to serve you really well, and they're going to be free, and don't worry about it. So that's great. But, for us, we really are focusing on those agents who do want to do number 2 or number 3 or number 4 on that list and need the right tool to do it. And for us, when it comes to those number 2, 3, 4, there's a lot of, it's the right fit. And that's ultimately, we don't want to go to everyone in the market and say, you must use this tool. We prefer to have the vibe of saying, hey, do you know what? We are a tool for this type of broker. And if you match that profile, we're going to be an amazing fit for you, and we're going to work really well together.
And you have an SMS automation or integration as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really, it seems to be the way people want to communicate these days.
Yep, it is, right? It's 98% open rates versus 20% open rates. So, I think that speaks to itself. But you also have to be careful, right? You have to, if you're just blowing someone up with texts, they're just going to mute that conversation. So, again, this is the third time I'll say it. Great power comes with great responsibility, especially with those texts, right? I think you want to make sure that you're not just an annoying reminder, but you pick those texts intentionally. You send them at the right time, and if you can do that, it's really, really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So I mean, you've covered a lot of ground here today. So we thank you very much for taking the time out of your day. If people want more information on Blue Mortgage, where should they go?
Yeah, so you can, just bluemortgage.ca is our website, BLUMORTGAGE. So no E in the middle there, so just BLU Mortgage. So that's us if you want to learn more about the CRM. And for anyone, I have my own little podcast, I guess. So if anybody's interested, it's Mortgage Tech Talks. You can check that out. We chat about all these types of things. But no, I really appreciate both you guys having me on. It was great chatting. Yeah, this hours flown by. A lot of fun stuff to talk about for sure. And I feel like we could have kept going, but no, I really appreciate it. And thanks again.
Absolutely. And we look forward to talking to you again and see how things go.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for tuning in to the $1 Billion Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode.
For more in-depth entrepreneurial insights, follow us on social media. And for more info on the show, go to billiondollarpodcast.com.
See you next time.